My name is Mira. I haven't slept through the night in over a year. I've left everything, my job, my apartment, my entire life behind. And I'm standing barefoot in the middle of the African bush, staring at a lion, who is staring right back at me, and for some reason I can't explain, I don't feel afraid, I feel like I belong. People think running away means weakness, but that's not true. It takes strength to disappear. To erase yourself. To leave behind what you know, even if it's killing you, and vanish into something bigger. Wilder, unforgiving. That's what I told myself, anyway, as I climbed into the rattling jeep that first morning, dust in my throat, the sun burning a hole in the horizon, my hands trembling under leather gloves that weren't mine. This wasn't a vacation. It wasn't a healing retreat. I wasn't here for clarity. I was here because I couldn't breathe in my old life anymore. Because I woke up every morning feeling like someone was standing on my chest. Because every hallway, every coffee mug, every stupid voicemail had his voice in it, and I needed to be somewhere he'd never find me, somewhere no one would. The conservation reserve was in Botswana. 10,000 hectares of red earth and rustling grass, far from any paved road or cell tower. When I arrived, the air was thick with heat and something else, something old. I could feel it in my skin. In the way the ground vibrated under my boots. Like this place remembered, animals were everywhere. Zebras grazing near the fencing. Antelope flitting through the brush like wind with legs. Elephants, too distant and solemn, but I only wanted to see one creature, and I hadn't even known it yet. He doesn't come close to anyone, said Rachel, the lead handler, as she pointed out the separate enclosure on the map. We feed him. We monitor him. That's it. Why? I asked. She looked up, narrowed her eyes at me like she was measuring something. Because Kumo lets us. That's the only reason. And because no one's stupid enough to get close. I waited for her to laugh. She didn't. Kumo, the lion who didn't belong. He'd been rescued 3 years earlier from a defunct traveling circus, chained to a steel crate, barely alive. They said when they found him, he was silent. Not weak. Not crying, just watching, and somehow, that made the volunteers more uneasy than if he'd roared. He waits, one of the handlers had said in a whisper. Like he's choosing. I didn't meet him the first week. I did what I was told. Cleaned pens. Helped tag hyenas. Slept in a canvas tent with a broken zipper, but at night, when everything went still, I'd hear the lions calling from the other enclosures, low, long. Ancient sounds that didn't feel like noise at all, they felt like reminders of what we used to be, out of what still watches us from the dark. It happened on the 12th day. I couldn't sleep again, the heat, the nightmares, the endless loop of memories I couldn't scrub from my brain. So I walked out past the tents. Past the old generator. Toward the one place they told us not to go unless accompanied, Zone 7, where they kept the untouchables. Where they kept him, the moon was full. It lit the path in silver and shadow. I had no flashlight, just instinct and adrenaline. As I approached the enclosure, my heart kicked against my ribs. I knew he was there before I saw him. I felt him, and then, through the chain-link fence, 2 glowing eyes caught the moonlight like fire caught in amber. Kumo. He was lying in the dirt, massive paws crossed, mane rippling in the night breeze. He didn't move but didn't growl, didn't blink. He just stared, and I froze, not because I was afraid, but because for the first time in months, something finally looked at me like it saw me, not as someone's girlfriend, not as someone broken, not as someone in need of fixing, just as I was. I don't remember how long I stood there, maybe minutes, maybe hours. The night hummed around us, cicadas of wind, the heartbeat of something I couldn't name. Then, slowly, deliberately, he stood. My breath caught. Every inch of him moved like thunder before a storm. Not rushed. Not hesitant, certain. He padded toward the fence, each step pressing deep into the earth. The muscles in his shoulders shifted like tectonic plates, and still, his eyes never left mine. He stopped 3 feet from the edge, and Saturday, that's when I realized I was crying, silent tears, trailing down my face, cooling as they met the night air. I didn't know why, maybe because for the first time the fear was gone, not replaced by peace, but replaced by truth. Kumo didn't look at me like a predator looks at prey. He looked at me the way I had longed to be looked at, with choice, like he could have walked away, but he didn't. That night, I returned to the tent with dust on my clothes and silence in my head, a kind of silence I hadn't known in years, not numbness, but stillness, like the storm inside me had paused to listen. I didn't tell anyone, not at first, because I knew what they'd say. That I was projecting. That Kumo was a lion, not a therapist, but I wasn't projecting, I wasn't healing, I was waking up. The next night, I returned, and the next, and again, each time, Kumo came to the fence, each time, Saturday, each time, I cried a little less, and he watched, not judging, not saving, just being. I don't know what made him choose me, maybe because I wasn't afraid of him. Or maybe because he could smell the damage on me, and knew I wasn't trying to hide it anymore. All I know is, by the end of the second week, I stopped feeling like I was running, and started feeling like I was being kept up by something wild, something true, but that peace didn't last. It never does, because one morning, I heard a voice I wasn't supposed to hear again, a voice I thought I'd left across an ocean, and that was the day everything changed. That was the day the lion got between us and wouldn't let me go. I heard his voice before I saw him, and sharp, confident. Too loud for the stillness of the reserve. I was stacking crates behind the food shed when it cut through the morning haze, that voice I hadn't heard in 10 months. But still knew like a scar under my skin. Hey, this where they keep the lions? Every muscle in my body locked that no. No, I peeked around the corner, and there he was, to Evan MYX, standing under the awning like he belonged there. Wearing mirrored sunglasses, safari gear far too clean, and that same smirk that used to mean I've already won. He hadn't seen me, not yet. I ducked back, heart slamming in my chest. My hands were shaking. I gripped the edge of a crate, pressing my nails into the wood until it bit back. Why was he here? How did he find me? I hadn't told anyone. I'd deleted my social media. Changed my number. I'd left everything, even my cat, in the city, and now he was here, like the past, could just walk in and swallow me whole. I waited until he moved toward the main tent. Then I slipped away, boots crunching the dry ground faster than I wanted them to. I didn't go to my tent. I went to zone 7 at him. Kumo was already waiting. He stood near the edge of the enclosure, tail flicking slowly behind him. His ears twitched when he saw me coming. I slowed as I approached, breath still ragged, voice caught in my throat, and then I stopped right in front of him. Just the fence between us. My voice came out in a whisper. He's here. Kumo tilted his head. He didn't blink. I dropped to my knees, the red dust soaking into my pants. I thought I left it behind, I said. I really did. I thought this place would be safe. That I choked on the rest. That you were safe. Still, Kumo didn't move, but his eyes, they changed, not softer. Not harder, just sharper, like something inside him shifted. Like he understood. I heard footsteps approaching from behind. I didn't have to turn. Wow, Evan said. So this is where you've been hiding. My stomach twisted. I stood slowly and turned. He looked exactly the same. Polished. Unbothered. His expression smug and charming, the way it always was when he wanted something. I told you not to follow me, I said. He lifted his hands in mock surrender. I didn't follow. I just connected some dots. You forget I helped you apply for the original visa. Of course. Of course he had. He always kept doors open, even ones I tried to slam shut. I just want to talk, he said. That's not a crime, is it? Kumo stepped forward. A single, deliberate step. Evan froze. His eyes flicked toward the lion behind the fence. Is that one of yours? He's not mine, I said, my voice low. Right, Evan said slowly. Well, he doesn't look too friendly. He's not. Evan laughed nervously. You always did. Like your animals dangerous. I didn't answer. Kumo's eyes never left him. You can't just disappear like that, Evan said. I deserve an explanation. You got one, I replied. When I left. That's not good enough for me. He took a step closer. That's when Kumo moved fast. He threw his body forward, crashing against the fence with a roar that split the air like thunder. The ground shook. Evan stumbled back, hands up, eyes wide with panic. Whoa. What the? Don't move, I said. Kumo stood at the fence, pressed against the chain link like a shadow trying to come through. His teeth bared. Eyes burning, not wild, focused on Evan, not on what he was. Evan backed away slowly, voice shaking. What the hell is wrong with that thing? Nothing, I said. He just doesn't like predators. Evan's face darkened, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something shift in him, a fear, not of me, but of what stood behind me. Kumo hadn't moved yet. He remained still, shoulders tense, eyes locked on Evan like he was memorizing him. "I'll be staying nearby," Evan said after a long pause, his voice cooler now. "Maybe when things calm down, you and I can have a real conversation." I didn't reply, and Kumo didn't blink. Evan turned and walked away fast. I stood there for a long time after he disappeared. Kumo backed up and paced once, then returned to the same spot near the fence, lying down slowly, guarding, watching. My knees buckled and I sank into the dust again. I didn't cry, I just stared at him. "He knew," I whispered. Kumo lifted his head slightly. "You knew before I did." That evening, I sat on the porch of the mess tent, arms wrapped around my knees. I watched the sun melt into the trees. I barely touched my dinner. Rachel came by and sat beside me. "He left," she said. "Your friend took a jeep back to town." "He wasn't my friend." She didn't press, but she did say, "That lion, Kumo. I've never seen him act like that." I nodded slowly. "He was protecting me." "From what?" "From someone who doesn't understand what no means." That night, I didn't go to my tent. I took my sleeping bag and a blanket, and I walked to Zone 7. I set up just a few meters from the fence, under the stars. With the wind and the dust and the silent rhythm of breathing across the wire, Kumo lay near the same spot, his eyes barely open, but still tracking me, still watching, still there, and I whispered into the night, "I'm not afraid anymore." He didn't move, but the sound of his slow, steady breath was all the answer I needed. The morning after Evan left, the sky looked different, too bright, too empty. As if something had been burned out of the horizon and nothing had taken its place. I sat beside the fire pit with a tin mug in both hands, the coffee inside long since gone cold. Across the camp, life moved on like normal, the other volunteers chatting about giraffe counts and darting procedures. No one else knew what had happened. Not really. Not what Evan had been. Not what he'd done. Not what it meant for him to be here. Only Kumo knew, and I hadn't seen him since sunrise. I tried to carry on a cleaned gear, organized storage bins, even helped one of the newer interns with fencing patrol, but the unease clung to me like the red dust on my skin, and worse, I couldn't stop hearing Evan's voice, the way he'd said, "Maybe when things calm down." It hadn't been a threat. Not directly, but it didn't need to be. That was the thing about Evan. He never had to raise his voice. He just smiled and waited. He could be patient for months. Years, because control, real control, was always quiet. By mid-afternoon, I made my decision. I was leaving, and not for good, not yet, but for a few days. To town. To somewhere with locks and walls and people who could make him stay gone. I told Rachel I needed to pick up supplies. Extra first aid kits. Medical tape. She didn't ask questions. "You know the trail," she said. "Take the southeast path. Shorter than the main road." I nodded, heart already pounding. I packed a small bag, slung it over my shoulder, and headed out, but I didn't make it far. The trail curved through tall grasses and broken acacia branches, narrowing at points into what looked like little more than dry animal tracks. The further I walked, the lighter my pack felt, and the heavier my thoughts became. What if he didn't go back to town? What if he was still watching? What if Kumo hadn't scared him off, but challenged him? That thought made me stop, made me turn around, just for a second, and that's when I saw him, not Evan and Kumo. That he stood about 10 meters behind me, half shadowed by low thorn trees that still composed. Watching him, my breath caught. Kumo? He didn't move, just stared. I took another step down the path. He stepped forward too, not fast, but enough to block it. I stopped. Turned fully toward him. "I have to go," I said softly. "I can't stay here right now." Still, he didn't move. "Please," I added. "I need to feel safe." That was when he stepped closer. Only a few feet now separated us, the trail narrow, the grasses swaying gently at our sides. I could see the details of him now, the scars across his snout, the small nick missing from his left ear, the dust coating the golden fur on his legs. He looked enormous, and yet not threatening. His body was relaxed, his head slightly lowered, but his eyes, they were asking, "Why are you running?" I dropped my bag, took a shaky step back. "I'm not like you," I said. I can't just stand still and trust it'll be okay. I don't have claws. I don't have teeth. My voice cracked. I just have fear. Kumo didn't break eye contact. Instead, he walked forward, right up to me. I froze that he stopped just short of touching me, his breath stirring the edge of my shirt, his mane brushing my elbow. I stood perfectly still, barely daring to blink, and then he did something I didn't expect. He Saturday right there on the path, between me and where I thought I needed to go. The wind picked up, birds scattered from the trees above, and in the distance, thunder rolled low across the plains. Kumo didn't flinch, and I understood, in that silence, what he was doing. He wasn't threatening me, he was holding me. I in place, them wide legs gave out, and I sank to the ground. We sat like that, a lion and a girl who wanted to be anywhere but inside her own fear, while the sky shifted from pale blue to steel gray, and for the first time, I let the tears fall freely, not because I was afraid, but because I knew he was right. I didn't need to run, not this time. Hours passed. Eventually, Kumo stood and nudged the bag at my feet with his paw. A gesture. If you must go, go, but I didn't pick it up. I turned around, back toward camp. That night, I returned to Zone 7. I stood outside the enclosure, the stars above flickering like far-off sparks in the dust. Kumo met me there, silent as always. He didn't come forward, neither did I, but I knew he'd blocked that path not to trap me, but to remind me not of something I'd forgotten, that strength doesn't always roar, sometimes, it just stands its ground. When I finally returned to my tent, I found something wedged under the flap. A note, folded neatly. One word written in ink that still felt warm. Soon. No signature, but I didn't need one. I crumpled the paper in my fist, heart pounding, vision swimming. Evan was still here. Or coming back, and next time, Kumo might not be enough, unless I let him. It started with footsteps, not the rushed kind that break branches or scare off birds, the careful kind, slow, measured, intentional. I was carrying a metal water canister from the solar tower back to the mess tent when I heard it, crunching softly through dry leaves behind me. I turned sharply, heart already in my throat. One AT first, then a shadow slipped between two acacia trees, and he stepped out. Evan. He was back, and this time, he wasn't smiling. What are you doing here? I asked. He raised his hands, not in peace, but to control the scene, the way he always had. I said I'd come back when you'd calmed down, he said, as if this were a reasonable reunion. And I gave you space. I respected your boundaries. You followed me across continents. That's not illegal. My jaw clenched. It should be. Evan took a step forward. You don't need to do this here, Mira. All these people? This lion obsession? You're not this person. You're just trying to heal. I snapped. Trying to be safe? He paused. But only for a breath. Then, no one else can protect you like I did. The words slammed into me, and just like that, I was back there, standing in a kitchen I hadn't chosen, apologizing for plates I didn't break, sleeping beside a man who loved me just enough to keep me from leaving, but not enough to let me live. I froze, and in that moment, before I could run, scream, react, Kumo appeared, not from behind, not from the side. He stepped between us, quiet, deliberate. His body was low, but powerful, the way water gathers just before a flood. He didn't roar. Didn't growl. He just existed, like stone in a stream, like a wall that couldn't be moved. Evan went pale. Jesus, he breathed, stumbling a step back. You let that thing roam loose? He's not a thing, I said. Kumo didn't take his eyes off Evan, not for a second. You trained him? Evan asked, trying to make it a joke. Is this your new boyfriend? The heat in my blood surged. I stepped closer to Kumo. No, I said. He's not trained. He's not tamed. He's free. And he still chose to stand here. Evan's eyes darted between us, calculating. He took another step back, but he wasn't done. Fine, he said coldly. You want to play games? Keep the lion. Stay in your fantasy. But don't come crying back when you realize this thing doesn't love you back. I didn't answer, because Kumo did. He stepped forward. One step, and stopped. But in that single movement, something shifted in the air. The space between us charged. Evan stumbled again, and I saw it, the thing I'd waited so long to see. A fear In his eyes, and not because of Kumo's size, not because of his teeth, but because Kumo wasn't afraid of him, and that made Evan powerless. "I'll be going," Evan said tightly, voice higher now. "But don't think this is over." He turned on his heel and vanished into the brush. I stayed frozen for a full minute, my hands trembling, my breath shallow, and Kumo didn't move. Not until I did. I turned to him, slowly, like waking from a trance, and knelt in the dirt. Beside him, his eyes found mine, not as a beast, not as a savior, but as something equal. That we stared at each other in silence, and I whispered, "Thank you." He leaned forward, his nose brushed my shoulder, and I felt something in me break, not in pain and release. That night, I didn't sleep in my tent. I lay on a sleeping pad outside the Zone 7 fence, under 1,000 stars that blinked like breath across the sky, and just beyond the fence, Kumo lay too, head up, always watching, always still. That he didn't need to touch me, his presence alone was enough. The night no longer felt like something I had to survive. It felt like something I belonged to. That I dreamed of the circus truck, not a memory, not mine, but his. I end the dream. Kumo was chained. Weak. Muzzled. His ribs visible beneath torn fur, and then, a door opened, light spilled in, and a hand reached toward him, but he didn't bite. He just stared, and waited. I woke up with tears on my cheeks. Kumo was gone from the fence line, but I knew he was near. The next morning, Rachel found me sitting outside the lion enclosure, legs crossed, notebook in my lap. She didn't ask why, she just sat beside me and said, "He's been watching you since the day you arrived." I looked at her, surprised. "You knew?" She nodded. "He doesn't do that for anyone. Not the handlers. Not the vet. Only you." "Why?" She smiled. "Maybe because you're the only one who doesn't look away." And I understood. Kumo didn't protect me because I was weak. He protected me because I saw him, because I didn't try to fix him. Or fear him. Or cage him. I let him be, and in return, he did the same for me. Later that day, I stood at the edge of the enclosure with my hand pressed to the fence. Kumo came to meet me. He didn't need words, his stillness was louder than any roar, and I whispered, "You knew before I did." But neither of us knew what would happen next, because Evan wasn't done, and Kumo wasn't leaving. Not now, not when he'd chosen to stay. The storm came just before dusk. Thunder rolled across the sky like a warning, low and slow. The wind twisted through the dry grasses, carrying the scent of rain and something else, tension. The kind that made the animals restless. The kind that made your spine tighten before you even knew why. I stood at the edge of Zone 7, one hand gripping the wire fence, the other resting against my chest like I could somehow hold my heartbeat still. Kumo was pacing, not frantic. Not angry, focused. He kept glancing toward the southern boundary of the reserve, and I understood whyso did I saw the lights before I saw the man. A truck. Black. Dusty. Windows tinted. It crawled down the dirt track like it belonged here, like this place owed it something. It didn't. Evan stepped out first, alone this time, and no words. No bags, just him, and the way he looked at me made my stomach drop. He wasn't trying to charm anymore. He wasn't trying to reason. He was trying to win. I walked to meet him halfway between the main trail and the enclosure. My fists were clenched. My throat dry. He smiled. "You made this really difficult, Mira." I didn't answer. "I came to take you home," he said calmly, like this was a reunion, not an ambush. "There is no home," I said flatly. His eyes flicked past me, to the enclosure behind me. "Is that what you're calling it now? Sleeping beside a wild animal?" My pulse jumped. "He's more honest than you ever were." Evan's smile cracked. "Just slightly. That lion has no loyalty," he said. "It'll turn on you. Just wait. They all do." That's when I heard it, not a growl. Not a roar. A step, heavy. Solid. Closer than I expected. Kumo. He had left the shadows of his enclosure and was standing just behind the fence now, head high, shoulders tense. Evan hesitated. "Kumo," I said softly, turning toward him. "It's okay." But it wasn't, because Evan didn't back off. He stepped closer. "You're confused," he said. "I get it. You've been alone out here too long. You think this means something. I know it does." "And what, you think he's protecting you?" he scoffed. "From me?" Kumo took another step forward, still inside the fence, still Silent, still watching, but there was something in his posture now, tighter. Tensed, like a bowstring drawn back and waiting. "I'm not leaving without you," Evan said, voice low and cold. I stepped back, that was all it took. One step, and the world shifted. Kumo moved, fast. He didn't crash into the fence this time. He didn't roar. He didn't warn. He leapt clean over the low section of the fence where the top panel had been removed for maintenance the day before. I screamed. Evan stumbled back, and Kumo stood between us, body broad, tail low, ears flat. Not attacking. Not advancing, just blocking, protecting, choosing. "No," I whispered. "Kumo, don't." But he didn't move, and neither did Evan. He froze. For the first time ever, Evan was completely still. No control, no comeback, just fear. Kumo stared him down, a full 10 seconds of held breath and ancient silence, and then Evan ran. He turned, tripped, scrambled into the truck, slammed the door, and backed away so fast the tires spat dust across the field. Gone. The rain started in earnest, then as if the sky had been waiting. It fell in sheets, warm and thick, soaking my hair and face, blurring the world around me. Kumo turned slowly and looked at me. He was soaked, his mane hanging heavy across his shoulders, but his eyes, they were the same, steady, grounded, and something in me broke. Again I fell to my knees. The mud clinging to my pants. Tears mixing with the rain. Kumo stepped forward, not to tower, not to threaten, just to be near. He lay down beside me in the mud, not behind, not beside the fence, but beside me, out here. On my side. The next morning, the team found us like that. Rachel stood silently for a long time before she finally whispered, "He's never done that before." I nodded. "I know." Kumo lifted his head, blinked once, then rested it again on his paws, like he knew it was over. For now, they reinforced the fence that week, added a second gate, raised the perimeter, not because Kumo had done anything wrong, but because no one could explain what he had done right. Rachel pulled me aside once and said, "We have rules here." But he followed something deeper. Instinct? I asked. "No," she said. Choice. Weeks passed. Evan never came back. He didn't call. Didn't write. He disappeared into the background, the way men like him do when the spotlight burns too hot. And me? I stayed, not to run, but to breathe. Kumo and I saw each other every day, not always at the fence, sometimes across the grasslands, sometimes in my dreams, always watching, always still. One evening, long after the volunteers had gone to sleep, I sat on the steps of the observation tower and whispered, "You got between us." The stars blinked back, and you wouldn't let me go. A shadow moved beyond the brush, just for a moment, then stilled, and I smiled, because I knew he was still there, always would be. I used to think survival meant silence, that the safest place to be was small and invisible, but Kumo taught me something else, that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand between who you were and who you're becoming, between the voice that says, "Stay small," and the one that says, "Rise." And between the hands that try to claim you, and the truth that you're not theirs anymore, because now I know, he didn't just get between me and Evan. He got between me and my fear. Wide silence, wide past, and he never let me go, not even once. The end.